Hey everybody, welcome to our 11 o'clock Facebook Live. We're back here in the education rack. We're going to feed the juvenile chain cat sharks, the little skates, and some of the crabs. We're going to start off by doing something kind of different here. Crippen was filming the little skates here in regular light here. And I'm going to take one of the lids off. We're going to move over to kind of the younger versions of the chain cat sharks, so you can see them in regular light. This is a regular LED light. So we're going to turn the lights out here and try it with a black light, because chain cat sharks, I'm going to take my mask off. Cat sharks biofluoresce, and so they're kind of a deep sea coastal shark, and they're small, and there's been a lot of studies recently about biofluorescence in turtles and corals and some other species. Our tiger salamanders here were actually found by the head researcher of the project that they actually biofluoresce too, and he did a lecture here. He's a National Geographic scholar, came here, and his name's Dr. Gruber, and he came here with his special camera and filters and showed us these cat sharks. So I'm going to turn the lights out here for a second. Give me a minute. This is a black light, so this is not actually what he would be using, but it's similar. It's ultraviolet light. Give me a second here. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but some of these guys, like if we look, you can see them kind of glowing or fluorescing in the light. I'll move it over to some of the larger ones here. It might be easier to see. You can kind of see them glowing a little bit. I'm going to move it off to the right here. Fruit wants to follow me. These guys are a little bit easier to see, a little bit more dramatic. So you can imagine if this were down in the depths of coastal waters, and they were kind of fluorescing. This would be one of the only ways, with the absence of light, that they could see each other or gather together. There's not really a consensus on why they biofluoresce right now, but it's got to be a type of communication, because they don't communication, either passive or active, trying to attract mates or warn predators or whatever. I'm going to turn the lights back on here for a second. Okay, so we're back under normal lighting. So like I said, these are kind of a offshore species, and they stay pretty small. We breed them here. These are about 4 to 6 months, and I'm gonna feed them a little bit here. We got looks like cut up herring, and then we have mysis for the smaller guys. This is clam strips. It's gel diet. Not sure what that is. What is that?
Whiting.
Whiting. Okay, so I'm gonna put this in here for these guys. I'm gonna give them some clam strips, and then I'm gonna give them some fish. So you watch. They get pretty amped up before they actually start getting pieces, because their sense of smell is a lot better. Like I said, to be kind of in deeper, darker water, so their sense of smell is a lot more effective than their sense of sight, and that's one of the reasons they're called chain cat sharks, is because they're cat-like eye. You can see they're doing the old shark feeding frenzy here. So the cat-like eye has kind of a lateral or horizontal, it's lateral eye slit that and also a reflective membrane that allows them to take in more light, and they're very sensitive to light. So we do actually keep this room pretty dark, and we don't have a light on the tanks like we would with some of the exhibits. You see they're getting pretty excited about it. These guys get fed about, every other day, and we feed them as needed. And you'll see they're kind of peeking out of the water here. It's called spy hopping, and we have to keep a lid on it because it will kind of jump out. They get pretty excited. So I'm going to move over to the juveniles here, and I'm not feeding them a whole lot because they've been fed. So these guys, you see them sitting here. Usually they smell the food. This is all one system, and they start getting excited. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions, by the way. So what I'm giving right now, this is kind of mysis shrimp. And some of these, there's one guy right in the middle, I think, of the camera spot. He's only a couple weeks old, and these guys grow pretty slowly. It depends on the water temperature. So you'll see them kind of scooting along the bottom, picking up food, and they don't, they'll kind of swim around it before they actually pick it up because they don't see it very well, like I said. So these guys are pretty well fed, so they're not super active, but when they get larger, we move them. We kind of have size classes. There's a bunch actually down below here. I'll go down to the bigger ones before we get to the skates. So down below here are larger ones, and they definitely smell the food from up above. I'm gonna just kind of throw it around in here. Try and do it right in front of the camera. And you'll see they kind of swim around in circles until they, kind of in concentric circles, till they isolate the smell or where the food is. Yeah, do we have a question?
We do. Somebody asked, are they friendly?
Yeah, I mean, as sharks go, they're not, they don't really interact very much because they don't have a good sense of sight, and they're largely predicated by sound, so smell, so they're usually sensitive to sound. So when we come around, we usually tend to startle them a little bit, and they can't recognize us, but they're very docile. So I don't know if they're friendly, but they're peaceful. You see them in big groups here. They don't generally attack each other. Sometimes they'll nip fins, but with us, if we got in here or anything, they wouldn't even pay us any mind. So I don't know if they're friendly, actively friendly, but they're pretty, I wouldn't say sweet, but I'm going to throw a little bit more in here. All right, so you want to move up, let's go over to this lobster. So Britt, our camera woman right now, does a lot of enrichment with the crustaceans. This happens to be our lobster. What's her name?
I heard this lobster's name is Muffin. We have Muffin and Cupcake, and this particular one is Muffin.
Okay, so do we have another question?
Yes, we do have another question about the cat sharks. Teresa would like to know, do you breed them to release into the wild?
We don't breed them to release into the wild, but we do breed them so they don't get taken from the wild. We produce a lot and then distribute them through AZA facilities all across the country. We've probably disseminated them to about 8 facilities, and so if you have a captive population, you never need to catch them out of the wild. We would release them if we were allowed, but there's a lot of regulations about animals in captivity or in a kind of holding population, managed population, and then releasing them. It depends state by state. These guys were originally from Woods Hole, Massachusetts, so they could probably release them. We'd have to send them back there. So what I did here is there's a little piece of herring in here, and I stuffed it in one of these little sections. And again, they're very nimble with their claws, especially their smaller claws. Their larger ones are mostly for defense and offense. And so you see this little toy, she's gonna smell it a lot sooner than she's gonna see it. So I definitely don't want to get my fingers in the way. We'll see what she does here. There, good. She's stuck a claw in one of the holes there and is checking it out.
She did already eat today, so she might not be as interested, but she's been pretty excited all day today, so maybe she knew something was going on.
And plus, lobsters are kind of feisty, so they're really territorial, so they want to just check something out, give it a little pinch, and make sure it's no threat, and then move on. So that's kind of what she did. She just flexed on it and then moved forward. So we're going to go up to the upper section, and this exhibits cold water. Like I said, they'd be offshore, and lobster are much more common up north. Maine is what's famous for lobsters up there. But so we keep this at about 58 degrees. We keep it cooler if we could, but it's hard to actually chill down water when the surrounding air is that much warmer. So we're going to go over to the little skates, and that's actually their species name. Well, their common name for their species is little skates. Do you have a question?
I do have a question from Isabella. She's age 6. She says, how old do the cat sharks get?
Cat sharks can get pretty old. Again, it depends. I don't know if you heard me earlier talking about water temperature, but their growth rate and overall age and the time until they get mature to have babies depends on the temperature. So up north, it takes them longer. They live longer, but they can live 20 years or more. These guys, they get mature at 4, 5 to 7 years old, depending on where they are, and then also depends on the sex too. But these guys, we've had some for as long as I don't know, 8 or 9 years that we've got as adults, and then we've had juveniles. We started the ones that breed on exhibit that produced all these offspring. We don't actually know how old they are, but we've had them for several years, and we can now, since we've had them from age 0, we can be able to, if we have them long enough, we'll actually see for ourselves how old they get. So these are little skates, like I mentioned, and they don't have a stinger like a ray. I don't know if I can show you one, maybe that guy on the edge there. The tail has, yeah, little kind of spikes on it that are little thorns that deter predators from eating it, but it doesn't have the spine like a stingray does. That's why they're called stingrays. And that's one of the differences between rays and skates. Skates lay eggs, which you probably see all over. If you go to Outer Banks, you probably see the little egg cases everywhere. Those are usually clear nose skates, which are similar to these guys. And stingrays give birth to live pups. And the skates do not have the stinger, and then the rays do have stinger. Do you have another question?
Yep, I have a question. Which came first, skates or sharks, or were they around at about the same time?
Ooh, that's interesting. Well, versions of sharks came around earliest. They're between 400 and 500 million years old is the first version of a shark. That's not the modern species right now. There's some, if you look up, Google some ancient sharks, they're really super strange species. And the rays developed afterwards. So it's kind of, if you think of a prototypical shark and then they're radiating outwards into all different forms, the skates and rays came later. They're kind of like a flattened out shark. There's still some strange versions of sharks around, like the cookie cutter shark, sawfish and guitarfish are pretty strange. So these guys, I would say that skates and rays came after. So I'll give them just a little bit more food, and then we're going to go on to the invertebrates in this tank. Try not to pour water on Brent here. So let's go over here. So we're going over to the sea stars. So these are pretty big. These are Forbes sea stars, the species. They're pretty common around mid-Atlantic and North Atlantic. This is a big version. You can kind of see with regards to my hand here. They're about the same size as my hand, so it's about 9 inches. And you'll see all the little tube feet. They eat clams. So this is a whole clam right here, and this is the one after they've eaten it. So what they do is, I'll be the sea star here. They'll get on it, kind of do this, and then use their tube feet to open this clam up. And so when it's open, their stomach's actually right here. They'll evert their stomach out of that midpoint as they're over a clam, inject it into the clam, and then start digesting it. And then obviously the clam dies in the process. So the tube feet are super, super strong. I'm not going to pull them off here, but you can see them kind of holding on to the glass and how they move around. They have a water vascular system, meaning they essentially can control their body shape and size and movement by water movement throughout their body. You can see it's kind of like a sack. I'm going to try and give them gel. I doubt I'll eat it, but I'm going to put it right in its feet. And sometimes they'll start, maybe not. Sometimes they'll start using the feet and funnel it towards their mouth. He looks like he's doing something. If I leave him alone, see his feet right there, and some on the end. He's actually smelling with his feet. When I say he, it could be a she, sorry. I did get her wet there.
I have a fun fact about the sea stars. A lot of people think that their tube feet end in suction cups and that they use suction to cling on to surfaces, but it's actually an adhesive, and that was a kind of a recent discovery. People kind of just assumed it was going to be suction, but no, it's just really sticky.
So we're going to move on here, and you see, here's a good one. Let me try this guy. I'm going to try putting food in his mouth and see what happens. Lost it. Darn it. I'm giving away all the crab food here. In there. You see it? Alright, well anyway, you can see his feet reaching for it, and they'll use it kind of like a conveyor belt and pull it along. They usually kind of scrunch up around it to protect it and protect themselves because they don't like their kind of underparts. That's where they're most vulnerable. Their outer shell has kind of hard spiracles and things on it to protect them from being eaten, but underside they're pretty soft. So I'm going to go up top here. If you want to follow up here, gotta bring our light. Like I said, we don't have much of a light on here because these guys generally don't appreciate the light too much. So we have a blue crab here. You want to guess if that's a, I don't know if you can see if it's a male or female. Let's try and get her to get, I gave it away, didn't I? Try and see if we can get her to expose. Playing a dangerous game there. So if you see the kind of dome-shaped brood pouch there, that's a female. The male has what would look like the Washington Monument, and that looks like the Capitol building. So they actually fill that full of eggs, and they'll fluff them up, run water over it. You see right there, and you'll see that's what sponge crabs. There are different stages when you see them at orange or brown or black, right there. So, a lot of people don't think that soft shell crabs are the same species as blue crabs. They're just soft blue crabs. These guys have a hard exoskeleton, and when they're getting breeding, the females will, well, actually, when they molt, they'll all be soft, but they also do that when they're breeding, is they'll go into kind of a soft stage, and they're really vulnerable at that time, and that's what people eat when you eat soft shell crabs. You're essentially eating this whole animal. It is live, and it is a blue crab. It's just a soft molting version. This is a spider crab. So these guys aren't quite as mobile, aren't quite as ferocious. You see his claws are much, much smaller. So blue crab, not only can they be more aggressive and have kind of a much stronger pinch and be more predatory, these guys are kind of pickers, and you'll see he's just kind of picking at stuff. I'll probably give him too big a piece. He'll probably have to work on that for 10 or 15 minutes. So they can actually reach behind their shell, or behind their head, onto their shell, pick algae. Oh, you might do it. No. Pick algae off it. They place things. Some people call them decorator crabs. They can attach things to their back, and so they can kind of hide. I'm also going to bring forward a whelk. See if I can do this without knocking the light in the water. I'm going to pull this guy out of the water. It's not going to do anything to him because he's going to close up, because that's what they do. You see, that's the soft meat, and you see he's closing up right there. He's closing up his little vent, and he's locking it down, so he's expelling the water, compressing his tissue, and he's kind of inserting all his soft parts into the shell so nothing can get to them. And they can kind of lock down like that and be watertight for hours at a time. If they get stranded at low tide or something, you see all the water coming out of them. So these guys are pretty cool. They're predatory too, believe it or not. They'll eat mollusks, but they also eat detritus. I'm putting him back. That's a knobbed whelk. There are 3 types of whelks in Virginia. There's knobbed, lightning, and channel whelk. I don't think we have them all here. Do we have them all here?
I don't believe so. I think we have knobbed and lightning in here.
Yes, knobbed and lightning pretty much look the same. They just have a different opening on the shell. The lightning are left side. So I'm just going to keep feeding these crabs here. Keep moving along.
Rita would like to know, how many fish do we have?
How many fish do we have? We have over 1,000 for sure, but it's hard to tell because some of our exhibits, like the stream exhibit, you could say it has 300, or you could be surprised and it has 600. So it kind of depends on the count. I'd probably guess somewhere around 1,300, somewhere around there. So you see this guy here, he's also another spider crab. And they get pretty big. There's a Japanese version that gets like 3 or 4 feet wide, and people generally don't eat this kind, but they are related to like Alaska king crabs and things like that. So I think that's about it. I'm going to wrap it up today. So you can join us on Monday morning when you can meet the great horned owl. I'll put the light on it so you guys can see these as we go off air here. You see their big fat bellies now. So at 11 o'clock on Monday morning, we'll be meeting the great horned owl. So that'll be fun. His name's Gary. So check us out, all our natural education on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. There's always updated information on the website. We try and get that up at least 24 hours in advance. I know we're going to be doing, we mentioned the blue crab. We'll be doing a blue crab enrichment on Tuesday. So Monday is meet the great horned owl, and then in the afternoon, it's a snake feeding. So both of those will be really cool. That's 11 a.m. and 2:30. So check those out on our website, and please continue to support us through our Emergency Animal Care Fund to help providing care for these animals. And we hope you guys stay happy and safe, and we'll see you when we open. Bye.